what's supposed to go on in the woodshed. Here's a principle. It's really important to know the moment at which your practicing is done. We're so focused as harmonica players on what notes do I play, or on banging out a lot of notes. But you have to pay attention to the connection between the instrument. Remember, an instrument is an instrument for expressing music, so the music's not in the instrument. You know, you might not remember that, but it's that thing in you. And I would encourage you to be attentive to several different things in the woodshed. And one of them is the moment when it's time to stop your practice session or your woodshed session. I don't know if I've ever talked about that. I don't know if I've ever heard anybody talk about it. They may have. I don't get to see all 50,000 videos uploaded daily to YouTube. But it's an incredibly important thing, the practice session thing, the moment at which the well is starting to run dry. Mr. Satan, Sterling McGee, used to say, I love my music, but I will not be a slave to it. I will not be a slave to my guitar. What he meant was, you know, it's very Zen. When you feel like playing, play. When you don't feel like playing, don't play. Now, I would say, when you don't feel like playing, play a little bit and see if the feeling comes to you. Maybe you end up feeling like playing. My 14-year-old son is like that all the time. I say, practice your trumpet. Yeah, I don't want to practice. When he starts practicing, hey, I like it. So sometimes the feeling springs to life. But you have to learn when it's not there. You have to learn when it's starting to fade. And you have to just feel that, know it, recognize it, and just put the harp back in the case. Just stop. And then come back to it later when you want to. Aha! So why do we go to the woodshed? What's the rationale? And why now, in this particular historical moment when there's a pandemic raging around, why might this be a good moment to go into the woodshed? So there's a line, I think, in Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man. Hibernation is a preparation for future action. It's one of those moments he's sort of hibernating in manipulated power and light, you know, with all the light bulbs, which is sort of an image of consciousness. Ralph Ellison has this guy kind of hiding out from the world. It's a novel that comes out just before the civil rights movement really blasted everybody out the doors and into the streets. Sort of like, could be like our moment. You know, I do believe that live music will have a comeback. But what Ellison was saying, hibernation is a preparation for future action. So one way to think about it is, the woodshed is a preparation for a future moment at which you will do what? At which you will, so for me it was, the woodshed was, I'm practicing all this stuff so that when I go down to Dan Lynch, the blues bar on East 12th Street where I used to participate in jam sessions and then begin to gig, the thrill of my life, to start to play gigs at the place where I learned how to play. That's, you don't get many thrills like that, but you get there by practicing. And so for me it was, I gotta work this stuff out so that it's in my fingers, it's in my lips, it's sort of, the reflexes are there. And so this is one of the important reasons why we go to the woodshed, to transform ourselves for some future moment. And this is a very good time for that, because that moment's not here. We're going to be hiding out a bit. We're going to be, life is going to be out there. Life out there is going to be discombobulated for a while. If you're a musician, if you're a harmonica player, if you're somebody who says, you know, I'd really like to get better so that when people see me next time, they'll be surprised, this is a great moment for that. It's a great moment for that. And so how might you, so that's the why is to transform yourself, or to get deep down into your music and work out something that you've never really had a chance to work out. So sometimes I'll say, and I think working every day. So let me say something else about a woodshed. When I wanted, in the year that led up to my solo album, Kick and Stomp, which was a real watershed for me. I'd never done anything like a one-man band thing. I'd only been playing drums for a year. It was all brand new. Everything felt really good and cutting edge. I decided I wanted to get better on 16th notes. For my whole playing career, all the years in the 90s when I was a touring musician with Satan and Adam, I could play triplets out the wazoo, but I wasn't very good on 16th notes. Jason Ritchie, my pal, was. And so I took this, and I've showed this before, but he showed me how to go. And he had come to Oxford that year, or maybe earlier in the year, and had played, and he's playing at a really fast level. He was playing just and I was like, I gotta get some of that. And so I began to work with that stuff. And over a period of 4 to 6 months, I woodshedded in the garage of my house next to my green show truck, in there with all of the lawn mowers and stuff. That was my space. That was my space. And I would put a towel on the roof of the truck, open up my harmonica case, get the harp out, have the, and I'd come back to it. And so I've talked about this, how to get faster. But the point is, it was a sort of project. It was a several months project. I used, because I wanted to get faster and be able to think musically, I used a metronome to sort of push the tempo, and I would push right to the place where it came apart, then I'd back it off 5%, back it off of, 4 or 5 beats a minute, and then I could play. Then I'd back it way off, and then I had plenty of technique, and I could actually begin to think in music. These are all really helpful things. I evolved these techniques myself, but I'm sure they're universal type things when you want to get better. The sort of conscious practice stuff, conscious mastery, right? So that's one way to use the woodshed, which is in a focused way to work on one particular technical thing, one technical problem. That particular woodshed did not have a place where I could play other people's music, and so it's actually important to have that. It's really important to record yourself and then to go back and listen to it, either later that day or the next day. It's important to record when you stumble across interesting things. It's important to record them because you'll forget them. So the woodshed can produce all of these insights. It's important to work day after day. My philosophy of the woodshed was, if I can learn one new thing, just one small thing today, if I can solve one little technical challenge. Recently, my trio, the Blues, Sir Rod and the Blues Doctors, my new trio, released our debut single called "Come Together," and there's one thing in there where I go, so that would be actually a really good, why don't we just end this now? Maybe I'll come back and do Woodshed 2. But let's talk about that, because I'm not really warmed up. I didn't do that particularly well. And also, I realized in the recording I did it on a D harp, not a C harp. And I think I used a custom D harp, a Joe Spires. It's a little faster. That's okay. This is a C harp, and I'll show you what I was doing. Because it's something, some of those high note things are very good if you want to sort of get better at repeated things. No bends required on this. Why don't you try that? So I'm going on the 9 blow. I'm glissandoing up. This would be we'll just practice on this a little bit, and I'll show you how I would work it out, what I would do, because I'm not doing it quite as well as I want to. What would you do? The woodshed's the perfect place for just solving those things. So, now if you can't make a single note, obviously that's something you need to be able to do. A single high note requires a sort of focused embouchure. You have to have it tight, and you may find that your lips get tired. I have not been practicing much lately, other things going on. So, there's no tonguing on those first 3 notes. But the 4th note, which is the repeated 8 draw, it's 9 blow, 9 draw, it's the octave, the flat 7th. The 8 draw is the 5th. It's just a shredding kind of riff. But it's that 4th note, the repeated 8 draw, where you've got your tongue glancingly on the roof of your mouth. So that's a pretty good tempo to start it on. and I'm not really stressing where my hands are. My way of holding it, which is this way, requires that I kind of hold it mostly with one hand. So my right hand's just kind of pushing on it, it's not really cupping it. Now, the moment I start to do that, I become aware that as I slow the tempo, I may start to run out of air. So breathing, I've got to think about that. I don't know. So what I find is that if I repeat that 4 to 6 times, I may need to find a way to take a little breath somewhere. Well, now we can use a little analysis. It contains 2 blow notes. No, it doesn't. It contains 1 blow note and 3 draw notes, which means I'm going to end up overinflated on the intake. I'm going to end up drawing in more air than I put out. That's where analysis in the woodshed can help you, right? So what I just figured out is that if I want to maintain equilibrium breath-wise on that riff, I need to make one of the 9 blows, I need to relax my embouchure slightly, and instead of just going, I need to go kind of clam down on it. So I'll do that every 4th time. I'll do 4, and then there I'll open it up slightly, just enough to push out some of the air that the extra air that I've accumulated. You see how the woodshed can work? Now, this is just Gussow. This is not anything you should be trying to do. Ideally, I would not be doing that. That's a hard riff. It's a hard riff to do repeatedly. One thing I may need to do is become conscious of whether my glottal stop is open or shut, which is to say whether I'm allowing air in through my nose as well as whether I'm sort of inhaling and exhaling through the nose. The best way to assess that is to try to do the riff, do this. And what I find is that my nose is the place where I want to blow air out. Makes sense. I'm accumulating too much here so that I really start to go down if I hold my nose. So the nose becomes a place where it helps you. Breathing a little bit out through the nose helps you maintain equilibrium on a repeated riff like that. Now, whew, take a pause. That was a lot. It was a lot. And when I'm doing this in the woodshed, I'm not talking it. I'm just solving the problem. I mean, occasionally I talk to myself, but most of us do. Don't we? Or we talk to a camera? Yeah, I think so. That's all for this time. I think there's probably a number 2. There's lots of other discoveries that one can make in the woodshed, but I think I've sort of introduced you to the concept, so let me just end with a little bit of a sermon. And by the way, I'm recording this on Easter, interestingly enough, so that would be a really good way of thinking about this. Look towards that day of future resurrection, when you're able to take what you've learned, you're able to take your new mastery, and you're able to go out to the jam session that you've always been afraid to go to, or the jam session where they tend to blow you off the stage, or the jam session where you've got somebody in your town who's better than you, but you know if you practice really hard you could be better than him or her. All these things, moments of future resurrection. Good things to have. So you're going to approach, this is your bridge moment. Sonny Rollins is your man. This is the moment that you've been gifted with. You can leave your problems are there, they're not going away, but you can find 15 minutes a day, a half hour a day. If you're truly crazed and you've got the time, an hour a day or 2 hours a day. This is your 10,000 hours interregnum, the period of in between, the interruption between that daily routine and whatever is going to happen in the future. This is the period when you can not achieve perfection, but you can up your